There comes a moment in every man's life when his energy shifts, when the effort he once poured into someone suddenly stops flowing in her direction. Not because he became cold, not because he became selfish, but because he finally woke up to the truth a good man can try and try and try until there is nothing left in him to give. And that moment where he no longer chases, no longer pleads, no longer waits, that is the moment she fears the most. Because deep inside she knows that when a good man stops caring, it's not temporary. It's not a mood. It's not a reaction. It's a permanent shift in his spirit that cannot be reversed once it happens. When a woman hurts a man who genuinely loved her, she often assumes he'll always return. She assumes the door will stay open, the messages will keep coming, the effort will never fade. She assumes his heart works like a revolving door, always ready to welcome her back. But good men don't stay in cycles forever. They give, they invest, they show up, but even they have a breaking point. And when they hit that point, something inside them snaps quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, just what's silently. And that silence is what shakes her core, because she remembers the version of him who cared too much. She remembers the good morning texts, the check-ins, the random calls, the small acts of affection, the emotional availability. She remembers how he made her feel valued, supported, and understood. And when all of that suddenly disappears, she begins to understand something she never thought about before. His love was not guaranteed. His presence was not permanent. His consistency was not owed to her. It was a choice he made every day. And once he stops choosing her, nothing she does can bring back the old version of him. The moment he stops chasing is the moment she loses emotional control. Because for so long, she relied on the idea that he would always be waiting, always be available, always be ready to fix things. She grew comfortable with his loyalty. She grew numb to his efforts. And she didn't notice how her actions were slowly pushing him farther away, inch by inch. Hurt after hurt, disrespect after disrespect, disappointment after disappointment, until one day he simply no longer had the strength to carry the relationship alone. And instead of making excuses, he makes a decision to let go. And that decision hits her harder than anything. Because now she's the one replaying everything in her mind. Every moment she pushed him away, every time she took him for granted, every time he stayed patient while she stayed careless. She starts realizing that he didn't ask for much. He didn't demand the impossible. He didn't expect perfection. He just wanted honesty, effort, appreciation, and respect. And she realizes she lost him not because he stopped loving, but because she stopped showing up. When he no longer reaches out, she begins to wonder where his attention has gone. When he no longer reacts, she begins to question who has replaced her. When he no longer waits for her, she begins to fear that she was the one holding him back from becoming the man he was meant to be. Losing his effort stings more than losing his presence, because a good man's effort is rare. And once a rare thing disappears, regret becomes unavoidable. And the truth is simple. A good man doesn't shut down quickly, but when he finally does, he never opens that door again the same way. There comes a point when a man stops trying to explain himself, not because he has nothing left to say, but because he finally understands that his words no longer matter to the person he's speaking to. He grows quiet, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion, an exhaustion that comes from repeatedly expressing feelings that were never taken seriously, from opening his heart only to have it dismissed, minimized, or misunderstood. And when a good man reaches that level of emotional fatigue, he begins to disconnect in ways that she never expected. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, steady shift, the kind that creeps in quietly, almost unnoticeably, until the silence becomes too obvious to ignore. He stops explaining why something hurt him. He stops trying to show her how her actions affected him. He stops repeating the same needs he's expressed a dozen times before. Instead of reacting, He simply withdraws. Instead of demanding change, he adjusts his expectations. Instead of fighting to be heard, he learns to be silent, not because he wants distance, but because he realizes that staying emotionally open to someone who doesn't value his vulnerability only leads to more disappointment. And that silence, his sudden lack of emotional defense, often speaks louder than anything he ever said before. She may notice the difference first in the small things, the way he no longer engages deeply in conversations, the way his tone softens, not with affection, but with detachment, the way he listens without offering opinions because he no longer feels like an equal participant in their connection. She may even mistake his quietness for peace, unaware that it's actually resignation. A man doesn't become distant because he stops feeling. He becomes distant because he feels too much and has grown tired of carrying the emotional weight alone. What she once called overreacting was actually him trying to save the relationship. What she once called being dramatic was his heart reaching out, asking for reassurance. What she once brushed off as too sensitive was him trying to build a deeper emotional bond. But each dismissal became a brick in the wall he eventually put up, and when that wall is finally complete, it becomes almost impossible to bring it down again. Because the distance he creates now isn't for punishment, it's for protection. He begins to prioritize his peace over proving his point. He starts choosing silence over arguments that lead nowhere. He pulls back not to hurt her, but to stop hurting himself. And that change in him often catches her by surprise. She wonders why he no longer opens up, why he doesn't share his thoughts the way he used to, why he seems physically present but emotionally far. But what she doesn't realize is that he once tried so hard to let her into the depths of his feelings. And every time he was met with indifference, he learned to keep a little more of himself hidden. This emotional distance becomes the quiet consequence of being unheard for too long. It's not bitterness. It's not revenge. It's self-preservation. And by the time she recognizes the weight of his silence, he has already found comfort in it. Because he finally learned that peace is more valuable than forcing a connection that only he was trying to maintain. There comes a moment when a woman finally realizes that the good man she took for granted isn't waiting at the door anymore. And that realization doesn't arrive with noise or drama. It arrives in the quiet moments, the ones where she sees a reflection of what her life used to look like with him and what it has become without his presence. One of the deepest fears she faces after hurting a good man is recognizing the irreplaceable stability he brought into her life. Because when a man with a good heart leaves, he doesn't leave chaos behind. He takes the calm with him. He takes the consistency. He takes the grounding energy that she never truly acknowledged when it was right in front of her. She starts to feel the absence of the things she thought were guaranteed, the small gestures he did without being asked, the way he cared about things she thought no one would ever notice, the security she felt when he said, "Don't worry, I've got it." She remembers how he created a safe space with his loyalty, his patience, and his willingness to show up day after day. And it's only when he's no longer there that she realizes how much she depended on that stability, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. A good man doesn't just add comfort to a woman's life. He becomes a foundation she didn't know she was standing on until it's gone. At first, she may try to convince herself that someone else could fill that role, that there are plenty of men out there, that losing him isn't the end of the world. But with time, she discovers the truth. Finding someone kind is easy. Finding someone attractive is easy. But finding someone with genuine consistency and emotional maturity is rare. He wasn't just another man. He was a man with intention. And intention is something that can't be forced, faked, or mass-produced. It's a quality that shows up in small moments, in subtle actions, in the way he made her feel safe without her even noticing. She begins to compare the men she meets with the man she lost, not because she wants to, but because she can't help it. She sees the difference in the way conversations feel shallow, in the way another man doesn't pay attention the same way, in the way no one else seems to understand her unspoken thoughts the way he instinctively did. It dawns on her that she didn't just lose a relationship, she lost a rare kind of emotional grounding that she may not find again. This is the fear that creeps in late at night when she lies awake replaying conversations she once brushed off, moments where he opened his heart and she responded with distance, times when he tried to be present and she was too caught up in her own world to appreciate his efforts. Regret grows loud in the quiet, and stability becomes something she aches for, not something she assumes she'll naturally receive again. She starts to see that a good man's presence was never about grand gestures. It was about his reliability, how he kept his word, how he followed through, how he made life easier without expecting anything extravagant in return. When that kind of energy goes missing, the contrast becomes glaring. Suddenly, she sees how unstable the world feels without his influence grounding her. She recognizes how much chaos she actually carried, and how he softened it without ever being asked. And it's in that realization that her fear becomes overwhelming. Not just the fear of losing him, but the fear of never finding another man with that level of emotional steadiness, patience, and genuine loyalty. She knows now that good men aren't just good, they're rare. And when she had one, she didn't treat him as such. In the end, the weight of that understanding sits heavy in her heart, reminding her of what she lost and what she may never have again. Another fear that hits her harder than she ever expected is the realization that life moves on without her, and that the good man she once hurt is no longer orbiting around her world. When she loses access to his presence, his attention, and his emotional investment, she starts to feel a kind of quiet panic. Because for so long, she assumed he would always be there. She assumed his loyalty was permanent, his availability guaranteed, his love unconditional and unshakable. But when a good man finally walks away, she's confronted with a truth she never wanted to face. If he was the one person she could count on, and now he's gone. At first, she may pretend it doesn't bother her. She may act as if she's relieved, free, or unaffected. But deep down, she knows the shift is enormous. She no longer has someone cheering for her victories or supporting her quietly during her failures. She no longer has the comfort of knowing there's someone who genuinely cares about her day, who listens when she talks, who checks on her without her needing to ask. That emotional safety net disappears, and with it, the illusion that she could walk in and out of his life whenever she pleased. What scares her even more is seeing him rebuild himself without her. There's something haunting about watching a man she thought she could always return to suddenly stand strong on his own, grow in silence, and elevate into a version she no longer has access to. She sees him becoming more confident, more focused, and more disciplined. And it hits her she isn't part of his future anymore. She wasted her opportunity. She gambled with someone who never gambled with her, and she lost. The hardest part is recognizing that he isn't waiting around. He isn't scrolling through old messages. He isn't wondering why she left or what he did wrong. That lack of reaction shakes her because it signals something she never imagined. She no longer holds emotional power over him. That's when she understands that good men don't move on out of spite. They move on because they've given everything they could, and they've finally chosen peace over pain. She thought she could leave him on the shelf, go explore the world, and come back when she was ready. But what she underestimated was his ability to heal, to grow, and to become someone even stronger without her influence. And when she sees that transformation happening from the outside, the fear sets in deeply. Because now, if she tries to return, she knows she won't find the same man waiting. He has new standards. He has new boundaries. He has new confidence. He has a new path. She also starts noticing something even more unsettling. Other people are admiring him now. Women who see his value. Women who appreciate his consistency. Women who recognize the qualities she dismissed. That thought alone can keep her awake at night. The fear that another woman will experience the version of him she was never patient enough to understand. The idea of another woman benefiting from the emotional maturity, strength, and loyalty she once mistreated is enough to create a regret she can't outrun. What she fears most in these moments isn't just losing him. It's the realization that he's becoming the best version of himself at the exact moment she no longer has a place in his life. And that truth sits heavily on her heart, reminding her that sometimes the pain of losing a good man isn't immediate. It grows over time as she watches him build a life she can no longer touch. Another fear that rises quietly, yet powerfully, after hurting a good man is the fear of never finding that level of emotional safety again. At first, she may think it's easy to replace him. She may believe that the world is full of men waiting to give her the same level of patience, affection, and stability. But reality has a way of humbling people, and sooner or later she realizes that good men are rare, very rare. Because the qualities she took for granted in him aren't common traits. They're earned through years of discipline, loyalty, character, and heart. She remembers how he listened without judging her, how he paid attention to things nobody else noticed. She remembers the way he showed up consistently, not just when it was convenient. She remembers the small things he did that made her feel important, things she didn't value at the time, because she was too busy chasing excitement, attention, or validation somewhere else. She assumed every man treated a woman like that. She assumed kindness, loyalty, and emotional depth were standard. But when she steps back into the dating world, she finds a harsh truth waiting for her. Most men aren't built like that. Most won't tolerate disrespect. Most won't invest deeply. Most won't stay when things get difficult. And that's when the fear hits her slowly at first, then all at once. She realizes she let go of someone who genuinely cared, not because she didn't want him, but because she didn't understand his value at the time. Now, every new interaction reminds her of the difference, the lack of effort from new men, the inconsistency, the emotional unavailability, the emptiness in conversations, the absence of real depth. It's like she keeps trying to replace a piece that doesn't exist anywhere else, and every attempt only makes her more aware of what she threw away. What amplifies that fear is the realization that the next man she encounters may not be willing to hold space for her flaws the way the good man did. He won't wait for her to grow. He won't support her through her insecurities. He won't guide her when she's confused or overwhelmed. The world doesn't offer unlimited chances, and she used up the one she had with someone who genuinely loved her. She starts to understand that the softness, patience, and emotional grounding she once labeled boring were actually the foundations of a healthy, stable relationship, something she may never experience again. But this fear doesn't only come from comparison, it comes from regret. Regret that she destroyed something built on trust. Regret that she pushed away someone who protected her heart even when she didn't protect his. Regret that she sabotaged the one connection that had the potential to change her entire life. And now, when she sits alone thinking about the past, she realizes she wasn't just rejecting him, she was rejecting the version of herself she could have become with him beside her. This fear grows even stronger when she sees him thriving emotionally, when he has inner peace, when he no longer carries the hurt she caused, when he's healed, when he's grown, because she knows that healing like that rarely includes going back. She knows he's building a life that doesn't include her. And she knows that life will be filled with the same emotional safety she once had. But now someone else will receive it. No woman wants to admit that she ruined her chance at a good thing. But deep down, she knows the truth. The fear isn't just about losing him. It's about losing the kind of love she may never experience again. And one of the deepest fears a woman carries after hurting a good man is the fear of facing the silence he leaves behind. Silence can be louder than shouting, more powerful than arguments, and more revealing than any confrontation. When a good man finally reaches his breaking point, not in anger, but in acceptance, he doesn't slam doors, he doesn't beg, and he doesn't try to prove his worth. He simply steps back. He removes his energy. He withdraws the emotional presence that once held everything together, and that silence hits her in ways she never expected. At first, she might convince herself that it doesn't matter, that his absence is just a momentary inconvenience, that she can fill the space with distractions, social media, friends, or new attention. But as time passes, the quiet becomes uncomfortable. The lack of his messages, his check-ins, his support, his consistency, it all begins to echo in her mind. She starts to notice the sudden emptiness where his voice used to be. And that emptiness becomes a mirror, reflecting back the weight of what she lost. She remembers how he used to respond immediately, how he always made time. Now, there's nothing, no calls, no just checking on you, no reassurance, no warmth. Instead, the silence forces her to sit with the consequences of her choices. It forces her to confront truths she avoided. It forces her to feel the absence of someone who actually cared. And the more she tries to distract herself, the louder that silence becomes, because silence has a way of highlighting what noise once covered. This silence also triggers a fear of losing the emotional power she once had over him. When she hurt a good man, she may have assumed he'd always be there, because good men tend to stay longer than they should. They forgive too much. They understand too deeply. They hold on even when the rope burns their hands. But once that man learns to let go, once he chooses himself, the dynamic changes. She no longer has the influence, the certainty, or the emotional upper hand she once took for granted. And that loss of control terrifies her. She starts to wonder if he finally realized his worth, if he finally understood he deserved better, if he found peace somewhere she can no longer reach. And the fear grows even stronger when she sees him becoming happier in his silence, when his glow returns, when his confidence rises, when he begins building a life beyond the pain she caused. The knowledge that he doesn't need her anymore creates a level of discomfort she can't ignore, because it means she wasn't as important to him as she assumed, or worse, she was important, but she pushed him away so hard that she made him stop caring. And the thing about silence is that it has no expiration date. It doesn't demand closure, doesn't give reassurance. It doesn't offer a path back. It simply exists as a reminder of what once was and what can never be again. She begins to fear that this silence is permanent, that he's gone for good, that she broke something that cannot be repaired. And that realization carries a sting far deeper than any argument ever could. Eventually, she understands that silence is what replaces love when love is no longer safe to give. It's the boundary he sets when he chooses peace over chaos, healing over hurt, and self-respect over longing. And by the time she realizes the full impact of that silence, it's too late, because the man she once hurt has learned to live without her.